Can you eat well without refrigeration? Yeah, of course you can. Having a good cooler and knowing how to use it will help. Hi there, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll share my best tips for using a cooler to keep food cold for a week at a time, and without ending up with a soggy mess. Now, today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Mantis Marine, makers of the Mantis Anchor, now available in models with and without a roll bar. Proven to set reliably in the most challenging bottoms, the Mantis Anchor digs like no other, making anchoring safer and boating more enjoyable. Mantis Marine brings to market practical, durable, and affordable marine products, including anchoring gear, scuba diving accessories, and rechargeable waterproof headlamps for hands-free lighting. Visit mantismarine.com and see for yourself. Okay, let's talk about how to use an icebox or cooler for food storage. If you've got that knowledge and a few tricks for making your ice last longer, you can have great meals when you're boating or camping, even without having a refrigerator. Now, Dave and I have done many extended trips where we only had a cooler for storing food. 4 times we've gone without a refrigerator for 2 months or more, and I've lost track of how many shorter trips. We eat well on those trips, not just a bunch of dehydrated meals. So here, let me tell you how I use a cold box for food storage. If you don't have a refrigerator, using an ice box, in other words, a built-in box to keep food on ice, or a cooler set up specifically for food storage instead of drinks, gives you a lot more options for food storage. The question is how to do it so the food doesn't end up soggy from the melting ice. Basically, rather than placing food directly on the ice in the cooler, which will melt and you'll end up with your food sitting in water, it's far better to get some racks or grates and put your food in bins on top of the racks. Now, before heading to the store, measure the length and width of your icebox or cooler. If it's not a rectangle, sketch the space and write down the measurements. Now, depending on the size, space, and your handiness, you can use either several plastic-covered wire organizer, things like you'd put into a cupboard for plates or something to make a double shelf, or you can cut wire shelves and grates to the size, and then mount 1-by-1 strips for the shelves to rest on. Whatever you do, you have to make it so that you can easily remove the shelves to replace the ice and clean the box, so don't mount them permanently. Now, I used racks, and in doing that, they don't have to 100% fill the inside of the box. They just have to sufficiently fill the space to form a solid base for the bins. 2 things are important, however. You need to have all the tops level without protrusions that are going to interfere with your bins. And you want the racks 5 to 6 inches off the bottom of the icebox so that sufficient ice can fit under them. If you want a heavier duty shelf, wire closet shelves are available in most home improvement stores, and they can be cut to whatever size you need. These are much sturdier if you're trying to span a long distance. Now, after you've got the racks, then get some bins to hold your food. I like the Sterilite bins that have the holes in the sides but the solid bottoms. I got both the racks and the bins in the houseware storage department in Walmart. You can find them all sorts of places online. I've put links to a couple things on Amazon. You can also get them there. Think about what you're going to want to store in the bins and size them accordingly. If you like celery, you're going to need 1 bin that's long enough for it. Depending on the depth of your box, you can also get stacking bins and have a double layer. Put the things that need to stay the coldest on the bottom. Not only is it nearest the ice, but hot air rises, so it's always the warmest at the top. Okay, let's talk a little bit about making your ice last longer. Block ice will last far longer than cubes. However, cubes will chill things faster. For food storage, get block ice whenever you can. Block ice will easily last 5 to 7 days in a well-insulated icebox, even in 90-plus degree weather. It'll last even longer if it's cooler. Cube ice will only last 1 to 2 days. If you freeze the blocks yourself, remove them from any plastic containers like milk jugs before you put them in the cooler. The plastic insulates the ice and less cold will get to your food. I've put a link to some tips for making block ice in the show notes also. You can check on that. Put the ice under the racks and then the food in the bins on the racks. If the icebox has a drain, leave it closed except when you actually need to drain water out. It's not a bad thing to have some water around the ice as it is colder than air. Leaving the drain open will just let hot air into the icebox. Okay, to preserve your ice and your food, it's best to put your drinks in a separate cooler. You're likely to want drinks more often than food, and having them separate means that you won't be letting cold out and heat into the food cooler every time you get a drink. And if the ice melts on the drinks because of the opening cooler that much often, you can still drink the drinks, whereas food will spoil if the ice melts faster than you expect. Okay, when I'm doing this, I use the cooler primarily for things like produce, dairy items, really more the fragile produce. A lot of produce will last well, but there's some things that I like to have that don't last too well outside of being chilled. Dairy items like your cheese, your butter, milk, that's always good. You can also store pre-frozen, commercially vacuum-sealed meats for a few days. Notice I said commercially vacuum-sealed meats, not just what you yourself sealed. It'll last for at least a couple days, particularly if you stick it right down on top of the ice. All of this, you can have wonderful meals, all the ingredients you want, and have fun on your trip. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, please be sure to sign up, subscribe for it, and tell your friends about it. Thanks.